first question is question A. Define inflation and demonstrate how to calculate the inflation rate with supporting data of inflation in Malaysia from years of 2019 to 2021. Based on our own research, we have found the definition by the Central Bank of Malaysia on their website, bnm.gov.my. It is said that inflation is the average rate of increase in the price of basket goods and services. In Malaysia, there are several different groups for basket goods and services, and each groups actually have their own inflation rate for each month. Now, if all of those groups' inflation rate are combined, it can be an inflation or a deflation. However, if all of them are combined, we can get the average rate for inflation rate of the year. On the slide shows the statistics that we have gained from the website of Malaysian Employers Federation, which they have sourced their data from the Department of Statistics Malaysia DOSM. Now, based on the question, the inflation rate for the year 2019 is 0.7%, followed by the year 2020 at negative 1.2%, which is actually a deflation. And then moving on to the next year of 2021, there is an inflation rate of 2.5%. Now here is the graph that shows the inflation in 2019 going into the deflation in 2020 and going back up as inflation in 2021. The reason for those numbers are, as we can see in 2019, it is actually a deflation in the transportation group, whilst in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic actually helps with deflation, whilst there is still inflation in food and beverage groups. Whilst in 2021, it is mentioned that the MCO 2.0 and 3.0 actually is the root of the problem. As said by the chief statistician Uzair Mahadin, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the daily lives of the community. However, vaccination programs have helped restore business confidence and further increase consumer confidence to go out shopping. Thus, as we can see, the inflation of 2.5%. Next, we're moving on to the calculation. The formula of inflation rate is current CPI minus initial CPI over the current CPI, and we can multiply that by 100. Let's take the inflation rate of 2020 for example. Now, the current CPI is 120.1 minus the initial CPI of 2019 at 121.5, and then we divide that by the current CPI of 120.1, and then only then we can times that by 100. Our answer that we get is negative 1.165, and based on the Department of Statistics Malaysia, the inflation rate of 2020 is negative 1.2%.
So, for the next question, analyze which group of people gain during inflation. The answer is the food industry. So, basically, inflation presents unique challenges and opportunities. It impacts production costs, consumer spending, and investment decisions. In April 2023, the Consumer Price Index CPI by 4.9%, marking the smallest increase 2 years. This represents a notable slowdown from previous months and is the smallest annual reading. The food industry can experience both gains such as challenges during inflation, depending on various factors such as price increases. During inflation, the prices of food products often rise. This can lead increased revenue for food producers, processors, and retailers as they can charge higher prices for their goods. However, input costs could be benefit for them because good companies also face higher input costs during inflation. This includes expenses such as raw material, labor, transportation, and energy. If these costs rise faster than the prices they can change for their products, it can squeeze profit margins. So for the second answer is the energy industry, and according to article that I studied, energy are the main drivers of this inflation. When overall inflation is higher, people tend to be more alert price increases of all strips and seek higher compensation for all price. Of concern is how can high inflation could increase the risk of energy prices, causing sizable second-round effects and a sustained increase in inflation. The energy industry can experience several gains during inflation is increased revenue. Inflation often leads to higher price for energy commodities such as oil, natural gas, and coal. Energy companies, including producers, distributors, and utilities, can thus generate higher revenues from selling these commodities. Second, high profit margins is energy prices rise during inflationary periods. Energy companies may enjoy the profit margins, especially if they can pass on cost increases to consumers through higher prices for electricity, gas, and food. Overall, while inflation can pose challenges such as higher input costs and uncertainty, the energy industry often stands to benefit from increased demand, higher prices for energy commodities, and opportunities for investment and innovation.
Next, for the question B, one groups that benefit the most during inflation, and according to IEA Executive Director Fred Byral, he said that electric vehicles are one of the driving forces in the new global energy economy. Based on the latest International Energy Agency (IEA), ECO's overall car market has risen from around 4% in 2020 to 40% in 2022. This statement is doubly related to the significant inflation in the global oil market. For example, government support in expanding the use of have been progressive, as well with the USA that introduced the Inflation Reduction Act and the IIJA, which collectively provide more than a dozen incentive and policy levers to move the United States forward on and clean transportation. One of the acts that affect the energy supply chain is when US Inflation Reduction Act places emphasis on strengthening domestic supply chains for batteries and minerals.
According to the Clean Investment Monitor, in the same time period, electric vehicles (EV), including plug-in hybrid, have jumped from 4.4% to 9.9% of new passenger vehicle sales. Federal investment helped domestic automakers increase their competitiveness and capture greater market share of this growing market, and American leadership in these key technology areas will provide opportunities to create good jobs, increase energy security, and reduce carbon pollution. IRA transportation sector provision will accelerate the shift to zero-emission vehicle (ZEV) by combining consumer and manufacturing policies. Consumer tax credit for new and used EV and tax credit for commercial EV, along with individual and commercial charging infrastructure tax credit, will increase sales. Domestic supply chain incentive and investment will boost EV manufacturing and battery production. Critical minerals mining and refining incentive will bolster industrial development. This investment come at a critical time as the US provide toward a clean transportation future, helping reduce the 23% of the total US greenhouse gas (GHG) emission that come from road transportation. The IRA clean transportation provisions will speed progress toward the Biden administration's EV and climate goal. The US Environmental Protection Agency (EPA) expect to release proposed rulemaking for GHG standards for both light-duty vehicles (LDV) and heavy-duty vehicles (HDV) in 2023, and this standard can build upon the progress by mid-the IRA.
Next, for the question C, why does Bank of Malaysia increase interest rates even when cost of living is rising? Based on the answer at bnm@gov.my, it is because inflation control, growing living expenses frequently point to the presence of inflationary forces. For example, is open market operation. There is another tool that central banks have to managing the money supply is open market operation. Central banks can alter interest rates and inflation by bringing money into or taking money out of the economy through the open market purchase or sale of government assets. The other point is currency stability. An increase in interest rates may draw in foreign investment. Strengthening the national currency, for example, foreign exchange reserve. Nations frequently keep foreign exchange reserve on hand as a safety net against outside shocks and as a means of intervening in currency market to keep the value of their own currency stable. To affect the exchange rate, this reserve can be utilized to buy or sell their own currency on the foreign exchange market.